There's a dream that progressives have held on to now for 50 or 60 years, that we will find a procedure for making big public decisions that will satisfy everyone, that we will eventually have a deliberative process that renders some sort of decision that costs nothing to anybody, where everyone is satisfied. That's just not the world that we live in. All of these big projects require trade-offs, and someone has to look at it from above and make a decision that some people are going to be unhappy with.
Mark, let's talk about the bias of experts because so many professions in which you've got specialized expertise attract people who have a particular worldview and that may not be comprehensive. I'm thinking of, urban planners, for example, so many of whom favor transit-oriented villages with particular types of, apartment buildings around transit, and they come out of schools that advocate for the same kind of design. And not that there's anything against that. Those can work extremely well and get more people to ride public transit, but they don't always. You end up often with people still driving their cars. They want to be in that hub because it's a cool place to be in their restaurants and nightlife and people on the streets, but they still drive to and from work. So when you've got panels of experts that kind of come out with a form of groupthink, how, how how do you avoid the decision makers pushing us to a world that doesn't really embody the diversity of views that are there?
Well, that's a terrific question, and I haven't come across it before. I think that that's actually where democracy comes in, is that you want to have appointed experts who ultimately are responsible to elected officials. And if you've got people who are ideologues and experts in the housing department of your local city who have a certain view of multifamily homes and how the community should work, and it's not working, then it should be up to the mayor or the city council to deal with that. So you want to have a balance of those experts. You also don't want to have a tragedy of the common, right? The alternative to the nightmare you just described, where you've got experts who have a certain group think and only want one sort of thing that isn't actually publicly popular, is you have a situation where everybody says, yes, we need more housing in California or in whatever part of the country you're in or anywhere in the world. And there's a global housing shortage at this point, but nobody wants the housing to be built near them, right? Everybody has the power to wield a veto about the lot that's, 3 doors down, where it was originally zoned for single family homes, and someone wants to build a duplex or a triplex or a small apartment building. And that's where you have truly a tragedy to come because probably the people that are saying, no, no, you can't build that there. We don't have enough capacity on the roads. It's gonna drain the local sewage and water system. We don't have the capacity for more housing here, but everybody wants it somewhere else. And so you have to weigh those concerns. Who ultimately the question is, who is the person that you want weighing those trade-offs? You don't want, the same ticky-tacky homes to be built everywhere per urban planners who have a certain view of transit and whatnot. You also don't want it to be that everyone can veto all the housing near them with the expectation that some other community will welcome it. And so you need ultimately to empower someone to make the decision.
And you don't want developers running roughshod over communities with whatever's just profitable necessarily, because that's not necessarily in the public interest too. Let me ask a listener or viewer question here. Rena asks if those affected by major projects don't have the ability to veto it, if they can't get to that critical mass, then what power do they have at all?
Well, this is the central problem of American democracy, right? This is the very thing that Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton were arguing about now nearly 250 years ago, which is that Thomas Jefferson had exactly that same fear. which was that ordinary people, in his case, yeoman farmers, would be run over roughshod by a very powerful centralized government. And he wanted to empower the people who lived on their farms to be able to manage their properties and their communities as they liked. And on the other hand, Alexander Hamilton, who saw America as a Hercules in the cradle, wanted to make sure that the country could reach its full potential for as many people as possible, and that required ordinary people giving up some sort of their own power so that someone could make a decision in the public interest. And we are constantly, as Americans, trying to negotiate between these two poles.
Hi, I'm Janice, and I am co-founder of Jews United for Democracy and Justice, as well as the America at a Crossroads weekly virtual town hall series. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and participate in our weekly live streams. You can also connect directly with our guests live on Zoom. Head over to JewsUnitedForDemocracy.org. Thanks for watching.
So you are right that if you give someone decision-making power about whether the highway or the rail line or the housing project or the transmission line is going to be built, you need to withhold from the local community ultimately the ability to veto the project as a whole. So the question is, who should decide on California high-speed rail if the rail has to go through one farmer or one series of farms somewhere, up the central, up the coast between the two cities, and those farmers don't want the line to bisect their farms, and it will affect their livelihoods and maybe the real sale value of their real estate. Like, have a really negative impact on their own situations. Is that worth giving up the benefit of having a high-speed connection between these two places so that fewer people are driving and fewer people are taking a plane? Someone needs to be able to ratify a trade-off in that case. It can't be that every person who owns a piece of land in between those two places can veto the project as a whole.
And it's often not the property owners, it's, let's say, an environmental organization that's they have very real concerns. But it doesn't necessarily mean, even though it's a real concern, you mentioned the orchid, in Maine or whatever, that should counterbalance a larger public good, perhaps. So it isn't necessarily just a property owner, but a group of people that might be empowered and have financial backing, and we're going to withhold support for you, elected official, if and I just picked because in California there are environmental organizations that are extremely effective and well backed and have a lot of clout. So that is even a bigger issue than, the single property owner. And it's hard because that clout can be strong political leverage in a state like California.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a dream that progressives have held on to now for 50 or 60 years, that we will find a procedure for making big public decisions that will satisfy everyone. If you go to a think tank report published on public infrastructure over the course of the last 50 years, pull it out of the archives of whatever think tank you want, almost guarantee you that one among the first three recommendations will be to tell the public early, right? Go to the community and tell them what your plans are so that they can participate, so that they can say, these are our concerns. This is what we would want if you're going to build this through our neighborhood. It's just universal. Like, everyone says that. And the presumption, sort of the underlying subtle presumption in that recommendation, is that if you go to people early, they can be convinced that the public good outweighs their own personal pique about some proposal, or that there's some route that will satisfy everyone. That if we just all get together around a table or in a forum and someone says, I don't think it should go here because it's going to affect this stream, and someone else says, I don't think it should go here because it's going to affect this neighborhood, whatever it is, that we will eventually have a deliberative process that renders some sort of decision that costs nothing to anybody. where everyone is satisfied. That's just not the world that we live in. All of these big projects require trade-offs, and someone has to look at it from above and make a decision that some people are going to be unhappy with.
Also, I just want to remind you that next Wednesday evening, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who I spoke with just yesterday on my radio program, Karen Bass will be with Madeline Brand for an hour-long conversation on immigration enforcement that has roiled Los Angeles. Talk about President Trump's response to LA's pushback to the methods used in immigration enforcement in Los Angeles. That's next Wednesday, July 2nd at 5 o'clock Pacific. LA Mayor Karen Bass. From all of us at America to Crossroads, have a terrific evening. Thank you for joining us.